In today's video, I want to talk about why I think it's so important to work on our weakest attributes as photographers, not just what we're great at. I think it's really common to want to improve at and embrace what we're great at. That's great. It's easy, it's fun, but we often overlook what we're weakest at. And so what I want to do today is I'll first share with you guys what I think my weakest traits as a photographer are. I'll talk about how I think we can improve upon them, and then I'll talk about why I think it can actually lead to growth as a person, not just as a photographer. So the first one for me would be that I am definitely an artist over a businessman. This has been a problem for me my whole life. I'm an idealistic, creative type, and I am not very motivated by money, unfortunately. I am motivated by wanting to create, but mostly by wanting to help people. That's like my biggest the biggest motivator period for me, I would say, is the need to improve the lives of people around me, be a positive effect in my community, etc. So how has that been problematic for me is that I don't push myself to make as much money as I can. In the past, I've underpriced myself. I've been too generous to people that didn't need it because I had a big heart, but that was at the cost of taking care of myself. I would take care of everyone around me without taking care of myself, and this is something I've had to learn how to work on. Similar to this would be my beliefs about disparity. I've always been triggered by disparity, and it goes back to when I was a little boy, and I would talk to my mom about, like, I'd ask her, why are there homeless people? And there was never going to be an answer that would have been like, oh, okay. Like, it broke my heart. It breaks my heart to this day. And so it created some bad beliefs about money for me. As a professional photographer, I've left money on the table because of it. I have never worked hard enough to make money as I should. I've always been, well, as long as I'm making enough. Now, is there anything wrong with that? Well, I think there kind of is, because why should you shortchange yourself? But it just wasn't enough to motivate me. So my solution to that, actually, I want to announce it right now. I'm still workshopping the idea, but my solution has basically been this. I don't make certain kinds of video out of resentment for like the whole complex between YouTube and influencers and big brands. So I don't make like gear review videos typically, but I've done it to an extreme where there's nothing wrong with me reviewing cameras I actually have bought and used for like a decade. And I know that would probably benefit you guys. So I've held myself back in that regard because of all these different beliefs. That's another thing I'm currently working on. Looking at my notes. Next, I want to talk about how my work ethic has actually been problematic in a way. So I'm one to believe that the work is what matters. As long as I'm delivering amazing work, that's all that matters. Now, of course, there's more to it, but I'll give you an example. When I show up to a job, I start shooting right away. When I'm on a job, I'm not really talking to people. I'm not like, shooting the shit with people. I'm just focused on the work. I'll engage in quick conversations, but I will politely, and I'll be very charismatic about everything, but I'll politely exit them as soon as I can to continue working, because I feel like I'm here to do a job and I want to do it the best I possibly can. However, the downside is that often it could come off as unfriendly. Another thing, and it actually kind of hurts my feelings a little bit, I had one problematic person that hired me once who commented on my appearance, saying it was off-putting because, now here's the truth, she just was trying to get something out of me. She wanted free services after the job, and I couldn't do it. I stood up for myself. And when she couldn't really argue with me because I had a firm contract, she then said that my appearance was appalling to her and her family. It wasn't true. I thought really hard about this one. Why would she think that, though? I take everything serious. Like, you have to consider it, right? You don't want to be arrogant. And I have incredibly sensitive eyes, which is actually why I'm having to wear glasses now. My eyes completely burn out in the sun. I was shooting into direct light, and I start to squint heavily. I actually got the same feedback when I worked at a summer camp as a photographer many, many years ago. I loved that job. I loved that whole summer. However, I would squint a lot because I didn't want to wear, I couldn't wear sunglasses. I was shooting, I was taking photos, and people thought I just didn't like camp. Um, Next, another quick example. I know I'm always curious, and I always want to grow. I'm a bit curious about how I'm perceived, like anyone. I've found that I've been perceived as very serious at times when I'm actually, I think, a very playful, not very serious person. But when I'm doing certain things I'm passionate about, I am pretty serious. Like, for example, teaching. I recently was teaching jujitsu classes. I was covering for my instructor. And my friend came to watch, and she was sitting next to a nice woman who was watching her husband. And so I was a new teacher to her husband. And during the water break, she said, "Hey, do you like the teacher?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, "I don't like him." Just volunteered it. And he's like, "Why?" "He's too serious." And she didn't know that the person she was sitting next to was my friend, and my friend told me about it. And I chuckled. I'm like, "That's interesting. I don't see myself that way." However, I absolutely am serious when I'm teaching because I really care about people's growth. All right. Next, let's move on to like how we can explore our worst traits, our worst abilities, and how we can like identify them and grow. So I've talked about it before on my channel. I think the most important thing is to do some journaling. You should have a photography journal. Now this journal can have many things, and don't limit it to my ideas. Don't limit it at all. Write whatever you want in it. But the most important things I would say to work on in it would be what you want to achieve maybe this week, this month, this year. Break it down however you want. And every job you go into, write out what your goals are. Write what you want to work on. And the best way to improve at anything, I think, especially when you're learning something that doesn't really have a template to follow, would be to always just work on something. And it doesn't matter what it can be. It could be very specific, or it could be very complex. So it could be, if you're a wedding photographer, I'm going to shoot the best cake photos ever. I'm going to become the best cake photographer at weddings, period. Or it could be something more open, like I'm going to work on my situational awareness. I'm going to work on being more relaxed when I shoot. I'm going to work on trying to time my shots better without relying on a burst. It doesn't really matter. You set your goals prior to the job, then you shoot the job, and immediately after, kind of like how you need to write down your dreams right away, write down everything you felt went well, everything you felt did not go well. After you've done that, what you can then do is write a check, or however you want to signify it. Identify what was in your control and what was not in your control. What's not in our control, we have to let go of right away. What's in our control, though, we can absolutely work on. It's extremely important, if you want to do this in a non-toxic way, in a constructive way, that you do this in a detached way and you just identify it without having the emotional attachment to it. If you're, and if that's not clear to you, I'll clarify now. If you're saying something like, "What an idiot, I forgot this again," that's not the language you want to be. Just identify, "Oh, I forgot this. How can I not forget next time?" A very simple, detached way. This is what I failed at, or this is what I didn't succeed at, and this is how I can succeed at it. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about, and if you subscribe to my channel, I think you understand. I'm not afraid of like putting this out there because I want people to think more broadly about photography than they necessarily do. Your improvement as a photographer can lead to your improvement as a person. And what you're working on as a person can reflect in your photography, and what you work on in photography can reflect in just you as a person. So a good example, let's say you want to practice non-attachment, stoicism in your photography, that will bleed out to your personal life. If you could shoot high-paced, high-stressed jobs and not get emotional about it and be very calm and collected, you'll likely carry that over to other things. Or whether it's just your life or other hobbies. I've talked a lot about how a lot of what I've learned in jiu-jitsu has really helped what I do in photography and vice versa. So really consider it. I hope you guys will. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support my channel, I would love for you to check out my Patreon page or like, subscribe, do your thing. Thank you for watching.